Komisarjevsky. Today's date is July 23rd, 2007, and the time is 4:55 p.m. Statement is taking place at the Cheshire Police Department headquarters, 500 Highland Ave, Cheshire, Connecticut. Those present are myself, which is Detective Joseph Vitello of the Cheshire Police Department, Detective Raphael Medina of the Central District Major Crime Squad of the Connecticut State Police, and Joshua Komisarjevsky. Joshua, would you please spell your first name?
Joshua.
And your middle initial?
A.
And your last name? Spell it, please.
Komisarjevsky.
And your birth date?
8/10/80.
Your address? Your home phone? And cell phone if you have one?
6784.
And where to get your DOB? Do you know where you are right now?
The Cheshire Police Department.
Do you know why you're here?
For a home invasion gone terribly wrong.
Okay. Joshua, how many years education do you have?
High school and college.
Did you get your diploma from high school?
Yes.
Okay. And you have some college? Okay. And you understand and can read and write English?
Yes.
Okay. Now, Joshua, when you came in a little while ago and we started talking to you, we read you a notice and waiver of rights, which is your constitutional rights.
That's correct.
You read those rights, you signed those rights, you initialed those rights, and you did it in two separate locations, one acknowledging that you read your rights and you understood them, and a second in which you waived your rights to an attorney and you wish to speak to us. Is that correct?
That's correct.
And did you do that freely and willingly on your part?
Yes.
Okay. Do you have any questions on that?
No.
Okay. That form's in front of us, and it's been signed by you, Detective Medina, and myself.
That's correct.
Okay. And we've briefly discussed this incident, and you started to give us a written statement, and you probably got maybe into one page, and at that point, we discussed that if you would like to give us a audio taped statement, and you agreed to that, correct?
That's correct.
And that's a decision you're comfortable with?
That's correct.
Okay, now in your written statement, we had you stop and we had you write that you wanted to go from the written form to the tape form, correct?
That's correct.
Okay, now the written form's in front of us. You have ended that statement and signed it. Now we're going to begin the tape statement. We're going to go over the entire incident from the start, and we have your name and so forth. So let's go back to the beginning, and this is your statement. So you stated you had met up with this other fellow.
Yeah, Stephen Hayes.
Okay. And then we discussed yesterday you started around afternoon time, I guess, and you started to tell us what transpired, that you went to Stop and Shop in Cheshire.
That's correct.
To meet a contractor.
Yeah, to receive payment from a contractor that I have done work for.
Okay.
That day.
So let's go from there and go over the whole statement that you were going to put in writing.
At that point, I had.
This was at what time?
So 6 o'clock-ish or so.
In the evening?
In the evening. I was waiting for a contractor to make payment. And while waiting, I saw a mother and a daughter walk into the Stop and Shop. And noticed that they were driving a very nice vehicle. And didn't really think much of it at the time. Because the contractor had shown up and we were discussing business and making payment. At which point, about 15 minutes later, the mother came back out with the daughter and got in their car as the contractor was also driving off where we had completed our transaction. For whatever reason, I chose to follow the mom and the daughter to their house and saw that they lived in a very nice house with a very nice car. And thought it would be nice to be there someday, not have to worry about financial problems and stress and all that goes with it. Throughout the day, Mr. Hayes has been calling me, wanting to hook up and discuss options and how we can come up with some money fast, whether it be legally or illegally obtained. That evening, I had spent the rest of the evening with my daughter. She had just recently come back from a 1-week vacation with her grandparents, and I'd seen her a little over a week, so stayed home and spent some time with her and put her to bed. And about 10 o'clock rolled around. I made a decision to go out and meet up with Mr. Stephen Hayes in Stop and Shop Plaza. From there, we sort of, he got into my vehicle and we drove around for a while, trying to come up with ideas of what we could do to make money and make money quick.
Did he drive there in a vehicle? Somebody drop him off?
He drove in his boss's truck,
Which is?
a red Chevy.
And where did he leave that at the Stop and Shop parking lot?
He left at the Stop and Shop parking lot.
He got in your vehicle?
He got in mine, yeah.
Okay, go ahead.
So from there, we were driving around talking about ways to score money and different contracts and jobs we can maybe do, and nothing really seemed to be fast enough to meet our looming debts and obligations. And the conversation had turned to the possibility of maybe illegally obtaining cash quickly. One of which of the ideas was to maybe come upon people taking money out of ATMs and catching them by surprise, or possibly somebody coming out of a bar late at night. Neither one of those ideas panned out. We just sort of aimlessly drove around instead, at which time I had recalled that I had seen this lady driving a very nice car and knew where her very nice house was, and had made mention of that to Mr. Hayes, and the possibility of them having money in the house might be fairly decent. So we made our way over to the house and parked on their street, but around the corner a little ways out of sight. Donned face mask and put on rubber gloves and walked down the sidewalk to their house.
Could you describe those face masks for us? What they may have looked like?
It was sort of, we were really doing it on the fly. There was no planning involved or anything, so I had no hat or anything, so I used an old work shirt, cut 2 holes in it, and just sort of tied it around my face. And Mr. Hayes had used a work hat that he had. He just pulled down over his face, put 2 holes out for eyes. of it, really.
Okay. Were you carrying any weapons at that point? Did you have anything on you illegal?
I was not carrying a weapon at that point. Mr. Hayes had a handgun, pellet gun, or BB gun that he had purchased at Walmart, Southington.
When did you purchase that?
He had actually made purchase of that the day prior, I believe it was, to this incident.
Were you with him when you purchased it?
I was in the store with him.
And it was the Walmart in Southington.
In Southington.
Did you pay cash?
He went up to the teller and paid cash, yes.
Okay. So now you approach the house. No other weapons?
No other weapons, no. We approached the house and went around back to see who was, if there were any lights on or anyone was awake. At which point we noticed that the father was sleeping downstairs in the sunroom.
Which is where, in the front of the house side?
It's in the back of the house.
Okay.
We continued to do a walk around of the house, checking windows and doors, all of which were locked, until we came to the bilko door, the back rear of the house. It went down to the basement, which was unlocked. I opened it and proceeded down the steps and to find out that the door into the basement itself was also unlocked.
What time do you think this is now?
This is about it's about 2:15 by the time I had gained access to the house.
In the morning?
In the morning.
Okay, so now you're inside the residence.
It might be a little bit later. It might be closer to like 2:30 or quarter of 3.
Okay.
Vaguely. Sure. I had mentioned that I didn't think that I would be able to take on the father alone, and Steve had mentioned that he didn't think he could creep through the house quietly enough to get up close to him, and mentioned that maybe I should find a bat or an object of similar weight to club him with and to incapacitate him temporarily so that we could tie him up. So I proceeded down into the basement and happened to find a baseball bat leaning on the stairs leading up into the kitchen. I took that bat and I went up the stairway. Slowly made my way through the dinette area to the doors leading into the sunroom where the father lay sleeping. At which point I just stood there for a good 15-20 minutes, standing behind him with his bat and not wanting to hit him, not thinking that I could. I could see Mr. Hayes in the window motioning to strike him and get it over with and get it done so that we can move on. And
did you strike him?
I did.
Okay. And go ahead and tell us where and how many times you struck this man.
I hit him in the head with a baseball bat. He let out this unearthly scream. I couldn't take the scream. I've never hit anybody in the head with anything. Never mind a baseball bat. I just kept hitting him until he finally packed up into the corner of the couch and quieted down and was just staring at me with wide open eyes. Just sheer confusion.
Was he bleeding?
Yeah, bleeding profusely.
Okay, so when he's on the couch curled up, and what happens?
Mr. Hayes was now tapping on the door window to my right, motioning for me to unlock the door. I gathered myself and unlocked the door, and he came in, and we argued for a minute as to who was going to tie him up. At which point we both ended up tying him. Mr. Hayes tied his hands and I tied his feet. And sat him on the couch. I had seen a cotton rope similar to what you would use to hang clothes for a clothesline, sitting on the top of the stairs, leading up to the kitchen. And retrieved that, put it into 2-foot lengths, roughly, to find hands and feet with. So I tied his hands and feet, or I tied his feet. So he tied his hands and then sat on the porch. Out on some portion of the couch and asked us quietly what our intentions were, like what we wanted. And I replied that we were simply here for money. That once we have what we came looking for, that we'd be out of, we'd be gone. I had asked if there was anybody else in the house and how many. The homeowner mentioned that the 3 women were upstairs. At which point Mr. Hayes and I proceeded up the stairway. He with the BB gun, he with the bat, and both of us with rope, the cookies of the rope. We passed the first daughter's room on the left-hand side, went down the hallway to the master bedroom, where we were going to subdue the mother first and then the 2 children, only to find out that one of the youngest daughters had actually fallen asleep with mom watching TV in the master bedroom. Mr. Hayes and I walked into the room, and I to the daughter's side of the bed, and Mr. Hayes to the mother's side of the bed, at which point Mr. Hayes put his hand over mom's mouth and shook her gently awake, and I followed suit with the youngest daughters. They both had woken up. They were very confused as to what was going on, but very compliant. When told to roll over on their stomach, put their hands behind their back, and so we tied their hands and feet. And we then left the room and proceeded back towards the daughter's room that we had passed, and walked in. And Mr. Hayes stood over the oldest daughter with the handgun, and shook her gently awake. She was no more than a little surprised about what was going on. Asking what we wanted and please not to hurt her. At which point I explained to her that we weren't here to hurt her, we were just here for money and that we'd be on our way. And she had said, okay. When asked to roll over on her stomach, get her hands behind her back, she did so quietly, and I tied her feet and Mr. A tied her hands. After which Mr. A and I proceeded to go through the house looking for valuables. Him and I were both in the mother's room, and she was telling Mr. A's where different locations were for jewelry and whatnot. Things of which I wasn't interested in. It was my understanding that Mr. Hayes and I were there strictly for cash. I was getting a little frustrated with him that he was picking up other than that.
You were strictly looking for cash?
Just cash.
And where's the father at this time?
The father is still downstairs in the sunroom on the couch. We periodically go downstairs to check on him. At one point, on my trips down there, he was still bleeding fairly profusely, so I found a towel from the kitchen and put it on his head to sort of slow the bleeding.
How many times your daughter did you tie them to anything?
Not at first. They were tied up to. They weren't restrained to like the bed or anything like that. They were just.
You mean their hands and feet were tied, but they weren't tied to anything at that time?
That's right.
Okay.
So Steve and I continued doing, looking around for money and realizing that there was no money there. The mother had mentioned that there was no safe. And Steve had found a check register with the amount of $40-something thousand in it. And we discussed the possibility of possibly sending the mother down to the bank to retrieve some amount of $15,000. We didn't want to withdraw the full amount of $40,000 in fear of raising some kind of red flag at the bank. The mother agreed. We reassured her that she could hide that, there wouldn't be any problems. There's somebody here for the money and would be on her way.
What time do you think it was now?
Probably getting on around 3:30, 4 o'clock, and around that time.
Okay, and aside from them being tied up and the father being injured, no one else at this point was injured?
That's correct.
Okay. Go ahead.
Mr. Hayes was continuing to rifle around the bedroom for some time to come. I was getting a little annoyed at the amount of noise that he was making. I had locked eyes with the youngest daughter. I was kind of taken back by how calm she was being, and she had this look of like she understood, that we were here, we weren't invading her home, and that she understood. Like she seemed to have this look in her eye that she understood, that we wouldn't hurt them. We'd just be on our way, and it sort of caught me off guard. We kept going back and forth up and downstairs, checking on the dad and whatnot, and realized that it was starting to get a little light outside, and realized that we were going to have to make a decision on what we were going to do with my car, because it was still parked out on the street around the corner, and I knew that I couldn't leave it there. Steve and I got into an argument about where and how we were going to move it and where to bring it.
Why hadn't you left the house at this point?
To depart the vehicle.
No. Why didn't you just leave the house then?
Looking for money.
Okay.
We're
So you had no intent on leaving the house at that point. You were just concerned about the car and where you're going to put it.
Yeah.
Okay.
Because we had sort of settled on having the mom go to the bank and withdraw money for us once the bank's opened at 9 o'clock.
Okay.
The mother seemed compliant about it.
Okay. So you were going to wait out till it was time to do that.
Yeah, we were going to sit it out.
Okay.
So we had to make arrangements to move the car, but nobody in the house was restrained to anything, and Steve was worried that, once we left to bring the vehicle somewhere, that they would just scatter and we'd come back to a house full of cops.
Okay. So they're tied but not restrained.
That's correct.
Okay.
So at which point we went back upstairs, Steve and I, and went into the mom's bedroom where the youngest daughter and mom were. I untied the feet of the youngest daughter and moved her into her own room, where I tied her, took the rope that was tying her hands and looped it untied one of her hands and looped it underneath the bed frame, and then reattached the other end of the rope to her other wrist.
In her own bedroom?
In her own bedroom.
Okay.
On her own bed. And then did the same with her ankles. Tied one ankle and then looped the rope through the bed frame and then tied the other ankle to the other end. So it wasn't too tight because I had noticed that she had eczema and I suffered from that myself. So I walked out of the youngest daughter's bedroom, and this Reyes had tied the mother to the master bed on her stomach, sprawled out. I thought it was a little uncomfortable for the mom, but time was sort of the essence, and went down to the hall and entered the older daughter's bedroom and untied her restraints and reattached them to the bed in a similar fashion that I did for the youngest daughter, her tying one wrist and looping it. The only problem with hers on her top headboard was she didn't have a crossbar, so we had to tie her wrists together and then loop it onto the bedposts. Then her legs, tied both of them and looped it around the lower bedpost.
So she was tied differently than the younger daughter?
She was tied in the same position, just modified. The knot.
A different method?
Yeah.
Okay.
We then went downstairs and asked the father for his keys to his vehicle. We couldn't find them because stuff was scattered all over the place. So Steve went back upstairs and asked the mother where her keys were. He found them and came back downstairs, and he went out the sunroom back door and got into the mom's vehicle, and I went down into the basement and out the basement loco hatch door and walked in the opposite direction to where my van was parked.
And your van is a what?
A red Chevy Venture.
And that was parked out in the street?
It was parked out on the street around the corner.
Okay.
Do you want to use the cell phone before you left?
I had, Steve and I had taken all the cell phones and all the portable phones and had put them in a central location so we could keep track of where the phones were.
You're referring to the family's phones then?
The family's phones.
Okay. And you did that for what purpose?
so that nobody would make any phone calls, without us knowing about it.
Okay.
Um,
Now, is everyone in the house restrained at this point, or just clarify that for us? So you got the mom and the younger daughter tied and restrained to their beds.
that's correct.
And what about the other daughter?
Well, the other daughter was also restrained to her
To her bed in her own bedroom.
In her own bedroom.
And the father's still downstairs in the sunroom, bleeding on the couch.
He's tied, but not restrained to the couch.
Okay. Go ahead.
For whatever reason, we didn't.
You didn't restrain him?
We didn't restrain him.
Okay.
So, we left Stephen in the mom's car, me in my car. We drove down Mountain Road.
Did you leave the father in that sunroom?
Yes.
Okay. So you're driving, you go get your car, Steve takes mom's, what was that?
It's a sport utility, like a sportier.
So like an SUV?
Kind of, except like one of those crossbreeds between a car and an SUV.
Okay. You remember the color?
Not off the top of my head.
Okay. So Steve drives, you drive, where do you go?
We went down Mountain Road. My original plan was to park my vehicle at Stop and Shop, but Steve thought that was too far away, so I instead passed Steve on Mountain Road and pulled into a condo complex across the street from West Main Street when you come to the end of Mountain.
Any particular reason you picked that?
I just figured I could park in one of the visitor parking spots and
Wouldn't be noticeable.
no one would be hiding in plain sight.
Okay.
I got out of my vehicle, locked it, and as Steve turned around and came back, and I got into Mom's car with Steve and drove back to the house. We had gotten into an argument on the way back to the house about his speed, because I knew that the Cheshire PT patrolled Mountain Road for speeders on the regular.
So you didn't want to get stopped?
Yeah, we didn't want to get stopped on the way back to the house, and a vehicle that wasn't ours.
Okay. So now you're back at the house in the homeowner's vehicle.
Yes.
And you go back into the house.
We entered into the house from the sunroom back door, where the father is still sitting on the couch.
Okay.
He had asked if the women were all right, and I responded by saying, reassuring him that they were fine, they were behaving themselves, and that everything would be fine.
Okay.
So Steve was tromping around the house and looking through stuff and whatnot. I went upstairs. Sort of sat with the youngest daughter. I noticed that she was, since being separated from her mom earlier, she was a lot more. She was a lot more stressed out than she was earlier.
Okay.
And was sweating profusely on her bed. I went back downstairs and got her a glass of water and brought that back up to her. Untied her hands and let her have something to drink. The sleeping bag that she used as a bedspread, the top sheet, I took off and threw it off to the side because it was soaking wet.
Okay.
And then when she was done with the glass of water, I let her lay back down without tying her hands so that she was a little more comfortable.
Okay.
I felt comfortable not tying her up because she was very well behaved, very compliant.
Anything occur And
No.
at that time with you and her?
No, we just talked a little bit about music and whatnot. And I would meet periodically to go check on the older sister and the mother and the father.
Okay. So things are pretty status quo at this point in the house. You guys are still
Yeah, I mean,
biding time?
We were biding time. Steve and I were nipping at each other a little bit because the stress level was very high. And, I've never done anything like this with anybody else. I was very uncomfortable with the situation, and I just felt very out of control of the whole thing.
Okay.
So the stress was starting to build between Steve and I.
All right. So where are we time-wise? What time do you think we're at?
This is probably about 5 o'clock-ish, 5:30-ish.
5 o'clock in the morning?
Yeah.
Okay.
Because it was definitely light outside.
Starting to get light? Okay.
At that point, we realized that we had to get the father out of the sunroom because it was getting so light, and the potential of being high visibility into that room. We didn't want anybody to see him tied up with a towel on his head.
Right. You were afraid somebody could see into the house and see that he was hurt or whatever?
Yeah, so we untied his feet and asked him if he was able to walk down to the basement. He said he was able to, and I helped him get up. He was a little dizzy, but we walked over to the basement stairs and made his way down the steps and down into the basement.
Okay.
We were going to have him lean up, sit down in the middle area of the basement and lean up against one of the concrete lolly columns.
Mm-hmm.
But he was a little shaky from what I can only assume was shock from losing blood. He wasn't bleeding as bad as he was. It had slowed towel.
Okay.
So I went upstairs and grabbed one of the big cushions off the couch so that he could sit on that instead of the cold concrete floor. And they got another pillow for his back against the lolly column.
Did you tie him back up?
Yeah, I retied his feet while Steve stood over the two of us with the big gun.
Was he assaulted again?
He was not. No, he was not assaulted for the rest of the evening. Just that one time.
Just at the beginning? Okay. So he's back downstairs, he's restrained. Is he tied to the lolly column?
No, he wasn't tied to the lolly column. He was just sitting there.
Okay. Go ahead.
So we went back upstairs. Again, just he was rummaging around. He did do some cleanup in the sunroom. Steve did.
Okay.
The table was knocked over and there was some blood on the tile floor, so we took a blanket over it. And threw us like a throw spread over the couch. There was blood on the couch.
Okay.
So somebody looked in the window, there was some blood all over the place. I went back upstairs to check on the two daughters.
You just came from downstairs with Dad, with Steve. You retied him. You moved him because you're worried about daylight, you said. Then you came up. You took care of some blood in the sunroom. Now you're back upstairs. You said you went back upstairs to check on the other females that were restrained. They're still restrained in the same spot that they were before you went and moved the cars and whatnot?
We had still in their beds. We had also, or Steve had brought up the point that about what they did for work and whether or not they needed to speak. Somebody needed to call in sick for them.
Yep.
So Steve went and down to the basement and asked the father when he needed, what time he needed to be to work, and who needed to be called to be let informed, that he was going to be late. I went to the mother and asked her what time she needed to be in to work, and she replied saying that she was a teacher and that she was off in the summer, so it was a non-issue. The father, on the other hand, is a doctor, apparently, and he didn't have to be in the office till 8:30, but he needed to make rounds at the hospital around 7, so he was expected to be somewhere at 7. He had made mention that of a supervisor's name that we have his wife contact in his head, saying that he wasn't feeling well. Being at a later time.
Okay, was that call made?
That call was made. Steve and I went upstairs and untied the mother from her bed and had her come on the way downstairs. She had asked if she could peek into both children's rooms just to make sure that both daughters are fine. And I was fine with that, and it sort of helped reassure KK as well.
That was KK.
KK is the youngest daughter, the one that I was spending time talking to.
Okay.
We went downstairs with the mother and had her sit on the love seat in the living room, where I retied her feet and her hands, and Steve went to scrounge up the portable phone, the house phone, which was in the kitchen.
Okay.
Got that, came back over and gave the phone to her, but she couldn't dial it, so because her hands were tied, so I untied her hands again. And so she made the phone call. I had then gone and posted up in the kitchen, just sort of looking around out the windows and just overseeing different entry points in the house while Steve was with the mother making necessary phone calls to call the father off from work.
Okay.
When that was done, Steve had called me over to tie her hands back up. He put the phone back in the kitchen, and he had thanked her that she did a good job in doing that.
Okay.
At that point, Steve was feeling a lot more comfortable about the mother going into the bank and withdrawing the $15,000 that we had originally thought of, that we had originally come to.
Okay. Then what bank were you planning on doing this at?
The original plan was to go to the Bank of America in Waterbury.
Waterbury?
That was my understanding.
Okay.
But it'd be better that beat that than you think that was familiar with her.
Okay.
I might notice that she was in distress.
Okay. So at this point now, you had allowed Mom to check the bedrooms, and those children were the two female daughters were tied, but not harmed,
No.
fully clothed.
Yeah, there were
no issues.
No issues at
Okay.
all.
So go on.
We still had several hours to kill. It was only about 6:30, 6:45 at that point.
Daylight.
Yeah, it was definitely daylight outside. I was getting annoyed with Steve again because there weren't that many shades downstairs, and he was constantly walking back and forth across windows. I got to the point where I was getting so frustrated that I just went back upstairs again to go check on the daughters, and again struck up a conversation with KK. Got her some more water. She had needed to go to the bathroom, so I had untied her and allowed her to use the bathroom in the master bedroom.
Okay.
When she was done, she came back into a room where I then restrained her feet, but let her hands be as they were previously. I also went to go give some water to the oldest daughter, but she wasn't really that thirsty, which was fine. We're starting to get down to crunch time.
Crunch time meaning?
We were thinking of, Steve leaving with Mom at about 8:45 because the bank closed at 9. And so we thought 8:45 would be a good time to leave. Just if he was wanted to make the water there, it'd take about 20 minutes to get there.
Okay. So everything's still where we are. As far as no one's injured other than the father, you guys are biding time till the 9 o'clock when you think you should go to the bank.
Window, yeah.
Mom had already called Dad in, her husband in to call her mom, the adult, of the audio tape statement of Joshua Komisarjevsky, which I have just flipped over. Okay, Josh. Go ahead.
During one of the times that I was sitting in the bedroom with KK, Steve had come in and had motioned for me to follow him into the office where the occupants of the house couldn't overhear us talking, and said that we were going to need gasoline. And I was surprised that gasoline was even a factor in what was going on here. We were just supposed to get the money and get out. And he was going on and on and on about DNA and even the drop of sweat or a hair falling off her head was enough to put us in jail because we were to have our DNA on record. He had first mentioned that we would take the occupants of the home with us in their vehicles and leave the house burning their way. I was a little stunned and perplexed about the whole situation, and he went back downstairs and I went back into KK's room. About 15 minutes later, Steve came back and motioned for me to go back into the office with him. And again, ranting and raving about DNA. And he was mad at me because I had, on several occasions, accidentally used his name in front of the occupants of the house. And flat out said, we got to kill him.
We got to what? We
got to kill him.
Kill him?
Yeah, kill the family and then burn the house down on top of them. That was not the plan. I'm not killing anyone. That's not how it's going down. Like, we were here simply for the money, get in and get out. It's almost 9 o'clock. Why are you bugging out now? And I had gotten on his case. If he was so worried about DNA, why was he walking around without his gloves on now?
He had removed his gloves?
Yeah, he had removed his gloves, and I was like, what are you doing?
Why did he do that?
I don't know. I'm not sure.
But at this point, he no longer has gloves on.
He no longer had gloves on.
You still do?
And I had gloves on the entire time.
Are your masks still on your heads?
Sometimes. Sometimes we'd fold it up so that we could pull it down at a moment's notice. We had put pillowcases over the occupants' heads
You did?
Yeah, so that they couldn't see us.
When did you do that?
We had done that after we had split them up, and then came back from the car ride because it was getting a little more difficult to be walking around the house with these very awkward face shields that we'd come up with on the fly.
So you covered their faces because you wanted to uncover your face?
Yes, correct. Yes.
Okay, were you trying to suffocate them at that time?
No, not at all.
You were just trying to prevent them from seeing you?
Exactly.
But at this point, other than you slipping with using Steve's real name, they really couldn't identify you facially because you were pretty much concealed?
Yeah.
Okay.
I was very confident that they wouldn't be able to recognize us.
Okay. So, go ahead.
As far as like the suffocation point, or the suffocation thing with the pillowcases, like when we put it over, like I made a point to like roll it back up, like put it over their head, but then roll it back up.
To just cover their eyes?
So it was just covering their eyes, not their nose and mouth.
Okay.
Because it does get hot and humid, underneath the pillowcase.
Sure.
I'm sure, especially when you're stressed.
Absolutely. Well, you were up to almost 9 o'clock where he's starting to bug out on you. You feel?
He's starting to feel the pressure about leaving the house with mom and then having to lose sight of the mom while she went to the bank alone in the parking lot. So things are getting a little tense between the two of us about little things.
Now, how did your conversation about killing the family end?
He just walked away like it was a statement. It wasn't a conversation. It was a statement.
Okay.
That's how it's going to be. And that's that.
Okay.
In my mind, it's simply not an option. It just isn't.
Did you voice that to him?
I had made mention that I'm not killing anybody. I'm not going to. He didn't seem to care or listen or whatever. He was focused on going to this drop in the next 10-15 minutes.
Okay.
Just to back up a little bit, when he had first mentioned about burning the house down, he had gone down to the garage and taken a bunch of bottles of 1 gallon bottles of windshield wiper fluid.
Okay.
And drained those into the kitchen sink. I heard the chugging of something being drained into the sink. I went downstairs to see what he was up to this time. And again, he had said, I'm going to go get gas. I'm going to use mom's car. I'll be back.
So at this point, he drains the bottles and he's going to go get gas.
With the bottles.
Which he does in fact do, taking mom's car, leaving you home with everyone else.
With everybody else. Leaves me with everybody and just takes off. Okay.
What time do you think that was?
The drop was at 9, or the pickup was at 9, so this was probably about 8 o'clock.
8 o'clock in the morning. Yeah. Where do you think he went?
Well, he didn't say where he was going to get it. I was assuming he was probably going to go to the gas station right at the fountain because it's right there.
Right.
But he somehow managed to end up over on Main Street heading towards Richard Chevrolet and called me asking if there was a gas station up ahead. I was like, well, where are you? He's like, I just passed Richard Chevrolet. I was like, well, your next gas station is in Little Southington.
Okay.
He's like, oh, well, I'll find one closer. And hung up. But then called back 15, 20 minutes later and said, how do I get back to Cheshire from Waterbury?
So he's calling you saying he's in Waterbury.
Yeah.
Did he have the gas?
And he apparently had the gas and was on his way back.
Okay.
when he had gone back to the house, he had 4 of those containers
Filled with gas.
filled with gasoline, which he put in the garage.
Put in the garage, meaning he put them down in the garage, or he poured them out?
No, he put them down in the garage.
Okay.
And you observed them doing this from where?
From the kitchen.
You were in the kitchen.
Yeah, or the dinette kitchen area.
And there's no one else down there with you, though, correct? Everyone else is upstairs in the bedrooms or downstairs in the basement.
No, mom is downstairs.
Mom is downstairs.
Yeah, she's sitting on the love seat.
So Mom has been down there the whole time since she made that call for Dad, for her husband to go to work.
Yeah, from that point on, she was downstairs for the remainder of the time.
Okay. Tied but not restrained.
Tied but not restrained.
Okay.
So like I had made mention before, our original day was 9:15. That didn't happen because he made a detour and plan and got back later and things took longer. He also wanted to make a bunch of phone calls to the Bank of America. He calls 411 to get their number,
Okay.
using the home phone, he basically wanted to get and ask, somebody at the branch what he needed specifically to withdraw a large sum of money from one's own account.
Okay.
In general, he was speaking in generalities to them. Are we going to? However, he couldn't get through because it wasn't 9 o'clock yet, so there wasn't a bank, so they kept referring him to an 800 number, which was an automated system. He called.
So you never actually made contact with the bank?
No, he was very frustrated about that. So finally he was like, the hell with it.
Okay.
And we got Mom ready, and the 2 of them got in the car.
Did he untie her?
Yes.
Completely?
Completely, yeah.
So her hands and feet are no longer tied?
Yeah,
She's in the car with him, heading to the Bank of America in Waterbury?
That's correct.
Okay.
Who's driving the car?
I believe she was driving the car.
Okay.
So they left at about 9 o'clock. I went down to check on Dad. He was still sitting downstairs fine.
Okay.
I had gone upstairs and I checked on the older sister. She had needed to go to the bathroom, so I untied her and let her go to the bathroom, then retied her in the same position that she was in.
Okay.
Asked her if she wanted water, and she said no. And then went into KK's room and again sat down and we were talking about just shooting the shit, I guess, just to pass time.
And how old do you think KK is?
We're between 14 and 16, probably.
And the other sister you thought was how old?
Between 18 and 19.
Okay, so KK, obviously she told you her nickname or whatever is KK, or you made that up?
No, that's the name that both her sister and her mother referred to her as.
Okay. So you're talking to KK about just general things?
Yeah, just like school and summer plans and stuff like that, or what her summer plans are. Obviously not mine.
Right.
And one thing led to another, and I ended up performing oral sex on KK.
You performed oral sex on KK?
On KK.
Did you do that while she was tied?
Yes.
Was it against her will?
Her hands were tied, but her feet weren't.
Was it against her will, or is it something you talked her into? How did that go?
It started off as against her will, then like she wasn't like resisting or anything, so I just kept doing it.
Okay. And did she reciprocate to you?
No. After about 5 minutes or so, I had let her dressed again, but before she did that, she asked if she could take a shower in the master bedroom shower,
Okay.
which I was fine with.
Now, you said you let her get dressed again. How is it she came upon being undressed? Because you originally said she was dressed.
Yeah, I used a pair of scissors and had cut her shirt off and her skirt off.
Was that for the purpose of having sex with her, or was there another reason you did that?
For the purpose of having sex.
Okay.
My purpose wasn't to have actual sex with her, just oral sex.
So you're saying you didn't have intercourse with her?
That's correct.
You performed oral sex, is what you said.
Yeah.
But you would cut her clothes off for that purpose?
Yes.
Okay. Did you take pictures of her?
I did, yes.
With?
My phone.
Camera phone and your cell phone?
Yeah.
Okay, so okay. Go ahead. So then you let her take a shower in the master bedroom, reclothe her. It's okay.
She still had her pillowcase on her head.
When you performed oral sex upon her, her face was still covered?
Yeah.
Okay.
And I had ejaculated on her stomach. That's why she wanted to take a shower.
Okay, you ejaculated on her stomach while you were performing oral sex on her? After?
After the fact.
By what method?
With my hand. Okay.
With your hand?
Yes.
You did not force her to do that to you? You did it?
I did it on my own.
Okay. So then that's why you allowed her to take a shower?
Yeah.
Okay.
I asked her if she wanted to take a shower. She was like, yes, please. She said, yes, please.
Did you let her take a shower without the pillowcase?
Yes.
Recover your face at that time?
I had recovered my face.
So she still had never seen you at this point?
That's correct.
Okay.
So she went to a shower. When she was done, she came back in her room, and I stepped out of her room so that she could get dressed.
Okay.
I went and checked on her older sister. And I started to go downstairs to go and check on the father, realizing that he was all the way in the basement and the KK wasn't restrained at all. So I sort of backed up and stood outside the hall until she was done. And we came in and she sat back down on the bed, and I retied her feet.
So she no longer, her face is not covered at this point, but yours is, so she can't see you still, so you retire.
I retired her, and I left her pillowcase off as well.
You did?
Yeah.
Okay.
So the only thing at that point was tied was just her feet.
Did you restrain her back to the bed?
Her feet were, not her hands, so.
Her feet were tied to the bed?
To the bed.
So she couldn't get up and walk out?
No.
Okay. Go ahead, so.
I then went downstairs to check on the father. And during this whole time, Steve kept calling me and giving me updates about where they were and what they were doing.
Okay, so while you're having sex with the youngest girl, performing oral sex and so forth, Steve and the mom are still out to the bank.
Yes.
And you check on the older daughter, did you have any sexual relations with her?
No, I didn't.
Okay. So they're still out now. He's calling you for what reasons?
More of, the conversation was weird because it was more like he was having a conversation with himself. Like he was talking like he was talking to me. However, it was more a show or it came across as more of a show for the mom.
What was he saying?
Things like so far everything's going well, and she knows he's like she knows she's very well aware of the fact that she needs to comply or things can go very badly.
So he's on his way to the bank trying to convince her to take the money?
Yeah, it seemed more like he was trying to convince her than updating me about anything.
Okay. Did he ask you at that time anything about the pictures? I recall you said something about a picture.
No. Those were for my own personal use.
Okay. So he didn't ask you to send him that picture? You took those pictures for yourself? Okay. Okay. So he's trying to convince her that this is real and take the money and there won't be any problems. But he's calling you kind of a little bizarre.
Yeah.
Okay. Go ahead.
I was also a little curious because they made it back so quickly. I was under the understanding that they were going to go all the way out to Waterbury and use the bank out there because it wasn't the mom's primary bank.
Oh. Okay. They may have. I'm not sure what bank they actually use.
However, they were back very quickly. So I'm not sure which Bank of America they actually did go to.
Did he get the money?
He did come home back to the house with the money. He and the mother walked in through the sunroof door back, and he had the money in his hands in what do you call those things?
Envelopes?
The envelopes, money envelopes.
Bank envelopes?
Yeah.
Like that said Bank of America?
Bank of America.
Okay.
Yeah.
How many do you think?
4 or 5.
4 or 5?
There was a stack of them.
Did you actually see the money?
I didn't actually see the money itself, no, just the bank envelopes.
Okay.
I had actually reached for them and sort of yanked them away from me and put them in this bag that he had been putting little odds and ends of jewelry and
Where'd you get the bag?
from the mother's room. It was a mother's.
Like a purse?
It was like a large purse that was.
So he had been dumping valuables in there?
Yeah, or semi-valuable type stuff.
Alright, when you reached for the money, he kind of pulled it back and put it in the bag
He put
without
it in
you
the
really
bag
seeing
without
it?
me ever seeing it.
Okay. Go ahead.
There was also a weird conversation when he had called prior to getting back to the house. He was calling to let me know that he was on his way, and I asked him, I was like, did everything go all right? And he sort of sidestepped the question. And then I asked him, how much did you get? And he sidestepped that question as well. And I thought that was really odd. Like, is he trying to, is he going to pass one on me and just take off with the mom and leave me here at the house by myself? So there was a lot of tension in the air when he did finally get back to the house.
Okay. Then what happened?
When we got back to the house, and he put the money in the bag, he sort of bluntly ordered me to retie Mom back on the love seat in the living room. So I tied her feet and her hands, like we had always done, throughout the day. He then pulls me to the side. We go into the dining room, which is on the other side of the house. And it says, very matter of factly, okay, you're ready. We gotta kill them and burn the house down. I'm like, I'm not killing anyone. There's no way. He goes, I'm not. We have the money. There's not a problem. They've done everything. They don't know who we are. They can't recognize us.
Why did he want him killed?
He was upset with the fact that I had messed up and used his first name.
Okay.
He was also going on and on about DNA.
Why was he so concerned about DNA? Did he have any sexual relations with anyone?
Not to my knowledge. If anyone had the most to worry about DNA, it would have been me. But I wasn't worried about it because she had taken a shower.
Okay.
So I don't know why he was so up in arms about it.
Okay.
So anyway,
Tell you how you really know.
Yeah, we're going back and forth about. He's like, well then, I'll kill the 2 daughters and you can kill the mom. I was like, I'm not killing anyone. I was like, I don't know how to put it more matter of factly. No one's dying by my hand today. It's not going to happen. I can't.
You didn't want to kill him?
I didn't want to kill anyone.
Okay.
Even with the father, like I couldn't keep hitting him. Like I just couldn't do it. That sound is just horrific. Like I
can only imagine.
It's not going to happen. And we kept going back and forth about it. And finally he was like, you know what, fuck it, I'll take care of all 3 of them. And he was walking around with these stockings that we had to run out of rope at one point.
Stockings as in women's stockings?
Yeah. And he used those for rope. So he was walking around with a stocking, talking about how he's going to just strangle all 3 of the women. And so he leaves to go into, I'm sitting in the dining room, the formal dining room, which is on the other side of the house, and he leaves to go into the living room where the mother is. And after a couple of minutes he comes back, and then over to the dining room where I am, and then he leaves again and to the other end of the house, and he's back, and it was back and forth like 4 or 5 times.
What was he doing? What was he?
It seemed like he was trying to like psych himself up, or like
to strangle the woman?
Yeah, to do what he felt he needed to do.
Okay.
And I'm sitting there and like beside myself. I'm like, I don't know what to do.
Where are you at this point?
Sitting in the formal dining room.
And everyone else is upstairs except for Mom and Dad, who's in the basement. You're downstairs with Mom and Steve.
That's correct.
Okay, so.
I have a clear view of the stairway, the front stairway that goes upstairs, and then you sort of go around the corner. You're in the kitchen, and then you go through the kitchen, and then you're in the living room where the mom was, and then of course, the father was downstairs in the basement. The 4th or 5th time that he had walked back into the room that I was in, the dining room, he left again and was in there for it was like 15 minutes,
alone with the mom.
With the mom, yeah. And I'm assuming he's just still trying to psych himself up. And during which time I hear this noise down in the basement, and suddenly recognized it as the built door that led to the outside.
Which is where the dad was.
Which is right where the dad was. And I yelled at the same time I jumped up, screaming to Steve that the father just took off. He just left. And was racing towards the room that he was in. And he was then coming back towards me, and as we're converging on the basement door, I could see behind Steve that the mother was laying lifelessly on the floor with her head on the love seat, and her pants were down around her ankles.
So she's in your opinion lifeless. Her pants are down by her ankles,
That's correct.
Which they hadn't been at any time prior to this.
Never, no.
And did you check on her? Did you ask him what he did?
No, because my primary concern at that point was the father taking off the basement door.
What made you think she was lifeless?
Her face was a deep purple from the neck up, like bluish, purplish, like cool blood. Being an EMT, I've seen plenty of lifeless bodies, and I recognized the mother as being quite lifeless. Her tongue was also sticking out of her mouth. And her eyes were very bugged out.
Her eyes were bugged. So as your EMT experience tells you, what did you think occurred?
I was fairly confident that Steve had finally built up the nerve to strangle her.
So at this point you think she's strangled and dead, pants are down, so you...
making the assumption that he was had also raped her.
But you didn't actually see him strangle or rape her, but that's your
correct.
opinion of
That's my opinion.
she's
yes.
definitely lifeless and, in your opinion, dead at this time.
Yes.
So now you both head towards the basement.
He stops at the basement door, and Park sent me to run down there and check to make sure that he did in fact take off.
Yeah.
Which I did. I went down there, and sure enough, he had definitely taken off out the back local door.
So the father basically escaped the house at this point.
That's correct. Yes.
Did you chase him?
No.
Okay, go ahead.
I went back upstairs and told Steve that he's gone. We got to get out of here right now. We have to leave right this second.
So on the upstairs, you mean the first floor where mom is already
That's correct. Yes.
motionless, lifeless,
Yeah. We're in the dinette.
and you want out?
Yeah, we have to go now. There's no option.
Okay.
It's only a matter of minutes before he gets to the neighbor's, or seconds even, before he gets to the neighbor's house and the police are called. And Steve's taking all this time to, I don't know what he was thinking. He ends up taking the bag with the money in it and shoving it in my chest and tells me to go start the car.
Okay.
And I'm like, where's the keys? Where's the keys? Where's the keys? And he's like, I don't know, they're over there somewhere. And we're going back and forth, like, with our heads chopped off. And in the middle of that, he darts into the garage.
Okay.
I turn around to keep looking for these keys. And I turn back around, and he's pouring a whole bunch of gasoline on the kitchen floor. And down the front hallway, which leads to the stairway.
Now mom is in the living room at this point?
Yeah, which is like the kitchen floor is like the living room where the mom is sort of like a sunken living room.
Okay. So it's kind of disconnected
Yes.
in a way?
That's correct.
Did he pour gasoline in there where mom is?
I believe I didn't see him pour gasoline on her, but there was certainly gasoline there. I mean, it reeked.
You could smell it.
Oh yeah, it smelled like you light a cigarette and the place would blow.
Okay, and then he goes up the stairs?
He then went up the stairs with 2 bottles.
Did you follow him upstairs?
I did. I followed him up the stairs because I couldn't understand. I was like, you can't seriously be contemplating burning these 2 girls alive. Like it's unconscionable. Like
Yes.
it's unreal.
It's bizarre.
It's completely unreal. It's just not what you can't do that. You just can't. And I was a little relieved, not relieved, but that he had not poured it in the bedrooms, but he had poured it up the stairway, down the hallway, and into the master bedroom.
And how do you know that?
Because he was walking out of the master bedroom, and you could see the gasoline in the carpet.
Leading up to which bedroom?
The master bedroom, which is in the back.
Did you check the 2 bedrooms?
He walked out of the master bedroom, walked past me, back downstairs. I went to KK's room. There was no gasoline in there. She was still in her bed.
She's still alive?
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
Face is covered?
Yes, the pillowcase was back over
Okay.
but up enough so that she could breathe. Then I closed the door, and then I went down to the back towards the stairway and past the oldest daughter's room. She too was sitting in her room, tied to her bed like she was previously, and I closed that door and I went downstairs.
And she's still alive?
Absolutely.
Why did you close the doors?
I can't imagine anyone being burned alive, so I thought I fucked up, I got myself in this horrible position, but they did what they were supposed to do. There's no reason for them to die, they were compliant the entire way. They're both, very bright young ladies. Even the mother shouldn't have died. She went out of her way to be, compliant. to the T, like with no talk back, no nothing. And why is this happening? Like I don't understand. This isn't the plan. We're supposed to just get the money and get out.
Right.
Period. They hadn't seen our faces. So when I fucked up, and used her name, there's a million Steves in this world.
Right. So you shut the door for a reason.
I thought it would buy some time,
When they're tied up, did you untie them?
I didn't even think about untying them. Like, for whatever stupid reason, like, it just didn't cross my mind.
So you
I don't
knew they were
know
tied, but you closed the doors and
To buy them time.
just in the hopes of buying them time.
Yeah.
You didn't untie them.
I did not tie them.
Fine.
In retrospect, I should have, but
Right.
in retrospect, I shouldn't even fucking been there in the first place.
I know.
But I get downstairs and I'm yelling at Steve. It's already been 5 minutes now. I'm confident. There's an army of police officers right outside the door waiting to open fire at me as I open the door.
You're pretty accurate.
And so I'm going straight for the back door, and Steve was like right behind me. And I get out the back door, and I'm going towards the back corner of the house, which leads to the garage, the front side of the garage where the car's parked. And I turn around, and Steve's not behind me anymore. So now I'm backtracking back into the house, and as I'm doing that, I'm looking through the sunroom, and I can see in the neighbor's yard that there's somebody plainly sitting there in the bushes watching us. And I was like, this isn't happening. And once again, Steve's racing upstairs.
He's racing upstairs.
Up the stairs again.
And you could see
As
him
I'm
from
yelling.
outside?
No, I'm walking into the house.
Oh, you're coming back in to see where he went.
Yeah, I was like, where the hell did he go?
And what's he doing?
He's racing up the stairs. And
What?
I wasn't sure what he had at first, until he comes racing back down the stairs and he throws one of the empty bottles into the kitchen.
Empty bottles of
gasoline.
gasoline. So he went back up with another
With
bottle
another
of gas?
bottle of gas.
So how many's that? 3 or 4?
4 altogether.
Okay. All right. So he goes back up with the last bottle.
That's correct.
And what did he do with it?
I wasn't up there, and I'm assuming I was hoping that he was just pouring it into the office, because we didn't pour any gasoline, or he didn't pour any gasoline in the office, and we had to spend a lot of time sitting in the chairs in there.
But he didn't pour any in the other 2 rooms initially either, correct?
That's correct.
So you don't know what he did with the last
No,
bottle?
I can't say for sure what he did with it.
He didn't tell you?
He did not say anything at all, and I'm screaming at this point. We gotta get out of here. This is madness. We finally race out the door. I have the key. I get into the car and I start it up. And as I'm starting it up, Steve just coming around the corner. Or no, let me backtrack. I'm sorry. Before we race out of the house, he's stumbling with this oversized pack of matches, trying to light one.
Okay.
And he gets through 2 of them, and none of them are lighting. And I keep telling him, we gotta go. And I can still see this person in the grass watching us.
Okay.
And he finally gets one lit and like flicks it.
Yep.
And I see it sail, and it hits the puddle of gasoline that was sitting on the tile floor of the kitchen.
Okay.
And the entire kitchen just erupts, in like a sea of flame.
One match? Just one match lit?
The third one that he tried.
Okay, so 2 unsuccessful, the third one lights.
The third one lights, and ignites the pool of gasoline in the kitchen. And it travels, I can briefly see it travel down the front hallway.
Towards where the mother would be, or?
No, towards where the stairway would be.
Okay.
I had already had my back turned, and I'm running for the door because I knew that the couch that the mom was dead against was doused, and I'm thinking in my mind it's confined space with gas vapors everywhere. I'm thinking like one of those action movie like blow up with the windows, So I'm racing out the door, and I race around the corner. I jump into the car, put the key in the ignition, I start it up, and just as I start it up, Steve comes running out and jumps into the passenger side. And as I throw it in reverse, the vehicle in reverse, I hear a cop siren. And I look in my rear view, and there's an unmarked car just pulling up and blocking the driveway, which I proceeded to hit. And
The unmarked.
the unmarked car, and when I hit it, it sort of jerked me, in which I jerked the wheel, and it sort of did this crazy arc up into the driving backwards into the curb and up the grass and into bushes.
Now, at this point, is the house fully on fire? Could you tell if the house is on fire?
I wasn't even
You
looking.
didn't know at this point. Okay, so
I could hear a fire alarm going off,
okay.
or a smoke detector going off.
Okay.
I knew that was going to happen anyway because the kitchen was flying.
It was on fire.
Yeah.
But when you left, the kitchen was actually in flames.
Yes.
Okay.
The whole floor of the kitchen was in flames.
So you back up. You hit the unmarked. You're trying to flee.
I got hung up in some bushes, and I was trying to put it in drive, and for whatever reason, it wasn't happening. Like I couldn't figure out how to drive anymore. Like I was just panic stricken. And I didn't know how to drive. I literally forgot how to drive. And Steve grabs the shifter and goes and drive and yells, "Pass it!" And which I did, and took off the curb and onto the street. And I'm looking around as it happens in like slow mo. As I'm looking around, there's cops everywhere, and every single gun is like trained like right at my head. And I was like, I'm gonna die today. I'm going to prison for the rest of my life, or I'm gonna die.
Okay, and then now you're fleeing the scene in the car. You're driving the homeowner's vehicle.
That's correct.
You already hit the unmarked. You go through the front lawn. You're headed up the street. Continue.
I come around like this little bend in the road, and there's two Cheshire police cars parked at the barricade on the road.
Yeah.
And then in the center of that, an officer with a rifle trained right on me, and some other officers off to the side.
To try to run them over?
I wasn't trying to specifically run him over. I was trying to get
You weren't
through.
stopping.
I wasn't stopping. I had to get through those police cars. There's no other way out.
Did you hit the officer?
I sure hope not.
Okay. You don't know if you did or not. Okay. Did you hit the cruisers?
I certainly hit the cruisers.
Okay. I know what happened.
The airbags deployed, and it got really blurry for a little bit, and all I could hear and like this distant echo was hands out of the car, get out of the car, hands out of the car, come out slowly. It felt like an eternity, but it sort of slowly complied and got out of the car and laid down face down on the pavement.
Did you say anything to the police officer who took you into custody?
There were a lot of questions being thrown at me, and I was still like, what do I do? Finally, one of the officers had finally gotten close enough where he was putting the handcuffs on, and he asked me how many people were in the house and if there is any other accomplices. I said there's absolutely no other accomplices, it's just me and him, and that there's 3 people in the house, one of which I thought was dead.
Referring to the mother.
Referring to the mother, that's correct. He again asked how many people are in the house or something to that effect, and I said 2 girls in the upstairs bedroom, front-facing bedrooms, and that they were still alive. And then he got on the radio and called whoever he needed.
Tell him the house was on fire?
I didn't, because I knew that he already knew because he was just talking to somebody, or somebody was mentioning that to him on the radio. And that's why I said that the two front bedrooms, they're right there. There's two windows for each one. The only two front bedrooms there.
So at that point, you were basically caught. You're detained.
That's correct.
We'll progress to here that you were transported here now. Once you got here, I just want to reiterate the fact that I asked you early on, and I meant to mention this in the beginning of the tape. I asked you if you had any allergies, illnesses, or under the influence of any drugs and/or alcohol, and you stated you were not. And you were not allergic to any. Correct?
I'm allergic to aspirin.
You said aspirin, correct. And we provided you with lunch, and that was one of the reasons I was asking you. McDonald's,
Yeah.
you had soda,
Yeah.
coffee, water, cheeseburgers. You've been provided use of the bathroom, correct?
Yeah.
And this statement and the verbal statement and part of the written statement, all of that was voluntary and uncoerced by us. You're doing this of your own free will.
Yes.
Correct?
I think the family deserves it. You know, they earn this. You know, I fucked up.
Absolutely. And you're absolutely right. Now, what's going to happen, Josh, is, having said all that, this statement has been recorded, as you know. It will be transcribed into typewritten form, after which you will be asked to read and sign the typewritten statement, which is your statement. Is that agreeable to you?
Yes.
Okay. Is there anything you want to add? You kind of just said it, that you screwed up and the family...
It wasn't supposed to be like this. It was simply go to the bank and we'll leave.
And as far as your statement's been truthful. That it's, you're not saying you strangled anybody. You're not saying you lit the match. You're not saying you poured the gas.
Yeah.
Obviously, you were there. You did all the other things, like you admit to assaulting the father.
I did assault the father.
And you had sexual contact with the daughter.
Yes.
Okay.
But I just didn't. I adamantly deny that any kind of strangulation or any of that.
You helped bind him up, tie him up. Nice.
I did.
You admit freely to that.
Yeah.
Okay.
Shutting the door.
And I did shut the doors. And, I was hoping to buy them time. Obviously.
Because they were alive in the house.
Obviously, I should have done better.
Okay, thank you, Joshua. And the time is now 6:28 or 18:28 in military. And this concludes the tape statement of Joshua Komisarjevsky.